so welcome back to the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast. We are recording live from the exhibition floor at Clean Power 22 in San Antonio, Texas. So anyway, I have here Jessica O'Connor from ArcVera's Renewables. Can you tell me a bit about what you guys are doing?
Sure. So ArcVera really is on two sides of the analysis where the resource meets the machine. And this is in wind, solar, and in battery storage. So on one side, we have atmospheric scientists, and they're doing the wind resource assessment from prospecting all the way through financeable energy yields, uncertainty analyses. This includes a lot of different kinds of wake modeling. We do our own kind of mesoscale modeling in various kinds of resolutions. And we do operational analyses and repower analyses. And then we also have an engineering team. So the engineering team, which I'm primarily on, does a lot of the technical due diligence and then technology diagnostics. So this would be RCAs, root cause analyses, end of warranty inspections, loads analyses. Putting those strain gauges on and everything. And but we also do power performance testing. So that is actually a really neat part of our business because it connects our WERA analyses to our engineering capabilities. So really it is where the resource meets the machine, or the wind meets the wind turbine.
Yeah, okay. So the reason why your booth caught my eye, I walked past and you have this really cool wake simulation.
Yeah.
I think it's of some of those recently auctioned offshore wind sites, right? Is in New York,
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, the New York bite.
Yeah, and so they had three or four different parcels of ocean surface, I guess you'd call it. You can't call it a land. Yeah. Near each other, and that have, they've just been, people have purchased the right through auction to develop a project there.
$4.37 billion.
Yeah, so that's something we've talked a fair bit about on the podcast because that's great. It was crazy, the amount of money that's going to change hands there. And so you've done this cool wake simulation where you have one, I think there's a really prevailing wind direction in the, what is it, kind of like from the southwest?
Southwest, yeah.
And so there's one wind farm going to be there, and then there's 2, 3 in the wake of that, and you've done some modeling that shows there's like going to be a significant effect on the downwind wind farms. So
that's right.
Can you tell me about that model?
Sure. So for background, we first used this model to test operational wind farms onshore to see this wind farm has just been built. This wind farm has been built for a long time, but they are waking each other, and there is a significant amount of energy loss because of it. And the model that we're using, which is WRF WFP, so weather research forecasting with wind turbine parameterization.
Okay, you Americans really love acronyms.
I know.
When I lived here, I had to really learn to speak like the language of acronyms.
And in offshore wind, there's even more acronyms, so it's like speaking an alien language.
Yeah.
So with WRF, it's a mesoscale model, and it is all of the physics within the atmosphere, or most of the physics within the atmosphere, in a kind of CFD, computational fluid dynamics domain. And this is all of the atmospheric boundary layer. And what we're doing is using reanalysis data to represent the spatial wind resource. For the WFP, wind farm parameterization, we're putting in momentum sinks. So these are actuator disks within the model. Now I'm just an engineer, so I'm speaking to that as well as I can. I don't speak atmospheric scientist, but as far as I understand, they're putting actuator disks within the model to represent the wind turbines. So this is a momentum sink. So as the wind is hitting the momentum sink, energy is taken out of the wind. So we run the model twice, one for ambient conditions and one with the momentum sinks in the turbine positions. And what you saw, which is a very beautiful, colorful array of colors, is the delta between those two models. And The New York bite really caught our attention because, well, first of all the money that was spent for those lease areas is tremendous and a little bit daunting. But also, they're so close to each other, and they're so large, and they are all lined up in the prevailing wind direction. So what we did was we took the two southernmost arrays, and we populated them 0.75 nautical miles north-south and 1 nautical mile east-west, a 15 megawatt theoretical wind turbine, 240 meter rotor diameter, so enormous theoretical.
But I'm sure that's what they're going to use by the time they install those.
Right,
Yeah.
they certainly seem to be planning to.
Yeah.
They want to use the largest and the greatest. But what we're seeing is something that is not really shown in any other wake models that are you're trying to capture those external wakes, is that these external wakes are lasting for over 100 kilometers.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's waking the entire array. Just the southern array is waking the entire collection of arrays. Yeah. So from the second array away from the most southern one, I don't want to name the arrays because we're not associated with the owners, but the mid array, we found 13% energy reduction deficit just because of external wakes. So this is not even considering the internal wake effects that are going to also occur with these large rotors.
Yeah.
When we filled in the next array, we found 26.6% loss in this other external array. And granted, we were cherry picking the days and times. We did look at all of the seasons, but we cherry picked the data so that it was all going in that primary wind direction. But it is the primary wind direction. So we expect to see something similar to that in the losses for external wakes.
Yeah, and the way that you visualized it in the little animation that I saw, you say how many meters per second deficit there is in the downwind wind farms, and it was, usually 1 or 2 meters per second deficit, and sometimes 4 meters per second, even like a really long way.
Yeah, it was getting black.
Downwind. Yeah. And I was really surprised because I know the rule of thumb is, you put wind turbines 6 diameters apart, and then you're supposed to have enough wake recombining that, that everything's, pretty good after that. But I mean, 6 diameters of a 250 meter wind turbine does not equal hundreds of kilometers.
No, it doesn't.
I was really surprised at how long it persisted for.
And honestly, we were too.
And do you think that the people the companies that have, won these auctions, do you think that they must have obviously done some modeling. You don't spend that much money and just on a whim. You do
they're not dummies. So there a lot of them are experienced in Europe and understand that there is an issue because of long distance wakes. And so, not knowing exactly how they were taking into account, I assume that they had some sort of deficit because of external wakes, but not really being able to model that. It was probably just an educated guess. And so what we're able to do and what we showed at IPF a few weeks ago was something that they hadn't seen before. And there was a lot of concern. And of course, we want to validate and we want to have the discussion looking at operating offshore wind projects, get their operational data. Obviously it needs to be more than one array, and see if what we're modeling in this format is a correct assumption or a correct way to model it.
Okay, so you said that this was based on your model that you use on onshore wind farms, and I assume you validated that onshore? Yeah,
so we use that. There's a particular couple of projects, I think it was in Iowa, that our client was, I think, the southernmost, and it was for a due diligence. It was for an M&A. And they wanted us to evaluate what those external wakes were. And we did, and found that the losses found in the operational data were within 15% of what we were modeling.
Okay.
So it was validated using operational data.
And do you get the wake, does it persist a lot longer offshore than onshore? And why is that?
Stability. So on offshore, the atmosphere is stable most of the time.
So you get less mixing.
Yeah, it's not mixing.
From outside air coming into the wake.
Right. Yes. But onshore, you have more mixing, unstable conditions during the day. But at night, you do have those, or at least in this area, those stable conditions where you have these long wicks that are propagating. But offshore, it's a lot more prevalent.
Yeah. Okay. So your next step will be to validate offshore.
Gosh, I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons why we have been presenting this is we want developers to work with us to help us validate it so that we can support them in their next ventures for offshore wind or onshore wind too. But offshore wind is such a big investment that we would hope that they want to do their due diligence.
And I mean, so it's one thing in New York where, kind of everyone's developing at the same time and they're aware of what else is being sold. But imagine if you had an offshore wind farm and then somebody built one, that you weren't expecting upwind from you, then that would be quite shocking.
Yeah, well, even if it was just 80, if it was as far as 80 kilometers, to even have a 5% energy deficit because of somebody else's development.
Makes a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all the time we've got to talk today, but I'll be really interested to see how you go if you do manage to, get a partner to develop with, to work with, and I want to hear your results. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate this time. I obviously love talking about this stuff, so any opportunity is great.
Yeah, great. Well, we should talk again sometime, but thanks a lot for coming on today.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.